Yes, I can hear you. I was in the wrong link.
Lovely, thank you. So, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's just a 1 minute difference. I need to say good morning or good afternoon. On behalf of ASMA, a short form of adoption of social media in academia, a leading community in academia, I, Chandan Anand, Vice President of InnoSub Group, welcome all of you in today's important and exciting deliberation. Let me have your attention for a minute towards InnoSub Group. We are India's leading digital solution media group, having a wide community outreach in growing sectors like academia, healthcare, HR, communities of sales, marketeers, and entrepreneurs. I feel extremely proud to brief you about our growing community in academia, ASMA. ASMA has hosted more than hundreds of virtual events and webinars, every session being very unique and niche in its own way. Thus, passionately delivered many successful series of deliberation. With 7 years of rich legacy, ASMA has grown with an outreach of over 1 lakh community members, connecting academia, corporate, government, comprising of 500 plus private universities, state universities, deemed universities, and open universities. Over 20,000 higher education institutes, schools, technical education institutes, and skill education. 25,000 plus schools and preschools, edtech companies, and startups. We are continuously serving them via various facets of knowledge sharing platform like ASMA Portal, ASMA TV, ASMA webinars, events, conferences, ASMA awards, MDPs, FDPs, and many more. Our mission to accelerate this movement of community outreach, knowledge sharing, and exploring collaboration opportunities. The journey becomes much easier with your support and encouragement. Life in post-pandemic world has accelerated the adoption of technology in the education sector. Educators have recognized the benefits and opportunities brought in by technology that goes beyond teaching and learning process. Through collaborations with technology partners, schools have been able to bring innovative practices into their processes to build more efficient and streamlined systems. We are really thankful and glad to have the support and association of Turnitin, a global technology solution provider promoting academic integrity, streamlined grading and feedback, deter plagiarism, and improve student outcomes. Turnitin is presenting ASMA School Education Leadership Forum. Topics for today's sessions are fostering academic integrity from a young age to shape tomorrow's leader and assessment in blended teaching environment. We will witness an interesting deliberation from our distinguished panel speakers. Our special guest for the day, Dr. Vishwajeet Chaji, Director Training and Skill Education, CBSE, Ministry of Education, Government of India. We will witness an interesting deliberation from all these eminent speakers who are the leaders and experts in school education. We are creating this knowledge sharing platform and networking platform, which I'm sure will also open doors for opportunities of collaborations. We are thrilled to inform that the webinar got a good response and participation. We are glad to have your participation as speakers, listeners, and attendees. We are really thankful to all of you for your contribution of your valuable time today. Going further and formally, opening the session for the day, may I please have the privilege to introduce our special speaker for the day, Chaitali Moitra. She is the Regional Director of South Asia Turnitin. Yes. Chaitali Moitra is the regional director of Turnitin, South Asia. She is well recognized as a leader in business development, marketing, and learning. With over 2 decades of experience across varied industry segments, she has served at the helm of various organizations and steered institutions towards excellence in the key success metrics in both financial and strategic growth capacity. She has served in the leadership positions in organizations such as the Italian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Global University System, and Macmillan Education. As the managing director of Collins Learning, she has worked extensively with the education sector in South Asia. She has mentored students of leading management institutes and is often invited by leading institutions to share her knowledge and experience. It is a privilege, Chaitali ji, to have you in forum today. May I please invite you for your opening address and a special address. Chaitali.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anand, for the introduction. I mean, I would also like to thank ASMA for partnering with us for today's event. I would like to just give a brief overview of Turnitin. Turnitin consists of a very diverse and passionate group of people which is spread across the world. What started as a plagiarism checking software company in 1998, it has now really evolved to be a leading provider for academic integrity and assessment solutions across the world. We strive to empower students to do their best in original work. For more than 20 years, Turnitin has partnered with educational institutions across the world to promote academic integrity, streamline assessment processes, deter plagiarism, and improve student outcomes. Today, we are very proud to say that we partner with 15,000 plus institutions globally in around 140 countries, and we cater to more than 40 million students across the globe. To give some of our global footprints, please know that 60% of students in US colleges and universities are using Turnitin. Around 90% of the top 20 universities in Europe use Turnitin. Also, greater than 94% of universities in Australia and New Zealand are using Turnitin. 500 plus academic institutions partner with us in India. We set up the Turnitin India office in 2017, and since then, we have had a successful growth trajectory. Leading educational bodies in India, as you are aware, such as AICT, UGC, and AIU, have established a strong focus on academic integrity since 2017. With the recently introduced National Education Policy, which focuses on creative thinking, India will be a dynamic skill-based competency development country. We believe India is all set to transform into a knowledge powerhouse. And we are here today to discuss academic integrity in the K-12 sector and gain a global perspective, to understand the challenges that are faced by the faculties, the teachers, and students in academic integrity in the respective institutions. In our second panel, we will discuss assessments and the challenges faced by teachers. With this, I welcome all the participants. Look forward to a fabulous panel discussion on academic integrity and assessment in blended learning. Thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you, Chaitali ji, for helping us understand the outreach of Turnitin and what specialty and in what capacity are you working globally, especially in India as well. Thank you so much for that introduction. Moving ahead, now it is a privilege and honor to invite a special guest for the day, uh, Dr. Vishwajeet Chaji. He is the Director, Training and Skill Education, the apex body of school education, CBSE, under Ministry of Education, Government of India. He's involved in the design of curriculum, development of students' resource books and training manuals. He also monitors the execution of various teachers training programs by 16 CBSE Center of Excellence. He previously served as a faculty member of Government Engineering College, Agartala, and Government of Tripura. He was also associated with Tripura Central University and International Informatics Center, Government of India, in various capacities. Dr. Saha handled the execution of various development projects of the World Bank, MHRD, now it's Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Information Technology, as well as research projects of AICT and UGC. He has contributed towards drafting the credit framework of skills and Education by EICT, Ministry of Education. Dr. Saha has visited various schools, universities, and other educational institutions and industries around the world to gain an understanding of the best practices which can be implemented in the Indian context. So it is a privilege and honor, Biswajit sir, to have you in School Education Leadership Forum. Please enlighten us and guide us how school education kids could, move towards the dimension of being leaders of coming India. Over to you, Vishwajit sir.
Thank you, Chandan. It's my proud privilege to be here with you, and especially during this period of time when almost every households are worried about how to survive. That is a challenge with respect to, I think, I should not mention the kind of population curve and other issues are also very much under discussions. But at the same time, how the educationist community who are actively in limelight to think and as well as strategize how we can ensure there should not be any learning loss. Thank to ASMA and other partner organizations, their head and office bearer, and of course, many of our school leaders who are today's active panelists, and those who are watching us through virtually. It's a prime time to think and also come out with the solution for a single problem, that is how to cope up with this learning loss and leadership, assessment, every agenda related to educations. I think somewhere down the lines are halting somewhere. Now, how to fuel it so that globally, every nations, whatever problem and challenges they are facing and also overcoming with the solutions becomes an active one, and country-specific solutions are also very much intended. So here in Government of India sides, there are lot of activities, lot of strategy, and how we can implement one by one that is being under discussions. NEP is of course a huge vision document, but at the same time, that implementation strategy to activate, I think wholehearted supports of all stakeholders are required. So at this point of time, I think when the pattern of education, and especially if we discuss on school education, the entire pattern is changing. So those who are handling with the data science and analytics, the entire pattern, they can give more AI, ML based some strategy. But a country like India, where that digital handled device use case, if we look into, that is not really encouraging in the rural India, and that means more we are focusing on pandemics, the digital divide is getting enhanced. So how and effective solutions would be there, and how school leader at this point of time will think on. Let me highlight some point, and of course you can preach in at any point of time. It is not a keynote address. It should be a discussion forum, a discussion board, and through which we can really come up with some solutions which is acceptable by the community. So first one is with respect to how we can engage the student at this point of time. It is more than 1 year. Believe me, more than 1 year. Again, we have to journey for another 1 year or 1.5 years. It is not, don't take me in a pessimistic way. It is reality when, and especially the sufferer are girl student and diversified student, and especially we call specially able children. What trauma their parents and students are facing at this point of time. So as a school leader, I think it is our duty how we can come up with solution and also address their day-to-day problem. Maybe one corner of the argument would be why we should, because ultimately every school is converted into a different segment. Rather, now there is a huge focus shift, and that focus shift is home becomes a school. In other forum also, I was yesterday mentioning that, and parents becomes the teacher. And what would be the role of our school leader, principal, teacher, and coordinator? They will be the mentor at this point of time. So every parent becomes our teacher, every home becomes a school, and that conversion, I think at this point of time, school leader as a mentor, how they can reach to every household. So that means there is a requirement of strong communication channel between the teacher, school leader, and the parents and students subsequently. I think that communication channel, how with the help of civil society like ASMA and other organizations, and school on its own are able to reach to every household, that is a big question. I know many of our schools, because we at CBSE, we feel privileged with our school and as well as our school leader and teacher, because they are taking almost utmost responsibility, sacrificing their personal need to ensure that last mile access is there. But even then, let me spell here through this forum, there is certain community which are not able to connect with our schools. It is not because of this network issue and other issue. Even then, some percentage is not able to. Now, what way we are able to reach to them, that is a big strategy. And as a school leader, you need to think every alternative strategy, because the problem is unique and solution also. Of course, there would be certain common solution, but unique solutions also you have to strategize. So at this point of time, for regular curriculum transaction, screencasting is also very much important. I know I am witnessing at my home also, teachers are taking the classes, and attention level with respect to screen, how much it is there, we can understand. So my request as a school leader, ensure that you for every classrooms must be recorded, and at the day end, that your communication channel must ensure out of your 40 or 45 students from a single class, how many were in that classroom. There is a prolonged absenteeisms, or there would be students might be attending the class but not really attentive in the digital platform. So that analysis is very much required. So then only we can we can really touch upon the every agenda logically. Otherwise, it would be a routine ball game which you are handling and you are satisfied internally. Okay, my entire teaching community are day-to-day basis taking the classes and covering the syllabus, but how far it reach to individually, that need to be assessed. So I think you have put a broad agenda on assessment, and at this point of time, I think there is a huge requirement of rethinking of classroom assessment. It could be a digital or remote classroom assessment, but how household can be activated for this so-called your summative and formative assessment. Purely that purpose in mind need to be reflected, and then only we can really come up, yes, certain level of learning outcomes is achieved even during the pandemic's time. So one is board-based or university-based assessment, and other is school-based assessment. And more we empower the school-based assessment, I think there would be a beauty. And here at this point of time, our traditional approach in assessment need to be converted into a new pattern, because what we expect from the student and what student expect from that assessment, I think that there are certain level of discrepancy or disjoint, whatever you call. So one way, the technology-based assessment, many organizations are trying hard, but psychologically, we need to understand what actually we are intending from the education's delivery. So I think certain point definitely you can absorb from the new education policy, but at the same time, as an individual teacher or individual school leader, you know the basic purpose of education. And that need to be spelled to every household. It is not the race of towards the marks, acquiring certain percentage, because people are struggling with their life. They're facing tremendously with respect to economically as well as socially. So how we can really give a booster with respect to culture, art integrations, all those things over a period of time we are spelling through our website, through a different web session. But that need to be internalized. And then only structurally the leadership role will reach to common man. I think there we need to work together, and definitely an alternative way of thinking education delivery, because that remote delivery has so many social problems. Technologically, there might be a sound technology available in many developed nations, and individually they are trying to monitor every student's portfolio. I think here in India also, we need to create that kind of platform through which at least we'll able to ensure, yes, there is a gap and there is a solution. I think school leader individually need to think, collectively need to think for that kind of solutions, and by means of our hub of learning and other activated roles, you are already energized and maybe trying to resolve the future problem. But the delivery, that means delivery in terms of classes 1 to 8, so-called our early childhood education, their more focus should be there. How through digital platform we will able to reach to them. And maybe sometimes it is only audio, sometimes maybe through phone call or through WhatsApp chat. So that means ultimately we are trying to involve the student to a technology platform. Okay, this is all right, partially it is doable, but at the same time, how we can activate the parental and community role in education delivery mechanisms. I think school leaders need to think more than that of their existing technology front, because that coverage is 30%, but 70% of the time the students are going to spend it in the in their home. So I think more focus on alternative activities, project-based learning, and group-based assignment, and also activating the student as well as the teachers from different schools on a common delivery mechanisms. And at CBSE, at this point of time, we are also thinking how we can deliver, and if need be, Diksha is one platform, Google G Suite-based some training delivery mechanisms we have already enacted. But at the same time, we are planning that the best of the best teacher, how they are handling the classroom, their recorded sessions, or if need be, CBSE will come into play to broadcast all such kind of activities through our own channel, so that at least it reach, and asynchronously the student and parents at their leisure time, they can look into all those dynamics of education, so that our basic purpose is that there should not be any learning loss, no matter what way pandemics is coming, or in a flip-flop mode, it is giving us a stress. So that is the only objective for which we are working. And as assessment is, I think we need to think of that how the delivery model with respect to curriculum transaction. Suppose partially, if certain curriculum components are being covered with real life activities, and how what kind of rubrics will helpful to assess. It is not that every time direct questions in the pattern of CBSE need to be there in your class 7 or 8 class assessment. So that alternative assessment strategy need to be evolved, and I strongly believe that the education community who are actively involved in this phase will come up with the solutions. With this note, let me pause here and thanking ASMA as well as all the eminent panelists. I think they will give more focus and more light on the agenda which flagged by Chandan and their organizations. Wishing you all the best, and all of you, please take care, because this is high time, even for the teacher, principal, and all the educationist community, because with CBSE, we are trying to touch upon 20 million household. And I think I'm praying Almighty, all those 20 million household for us, for the entire nation, and all the education community who are highly involved at this point of time. Please take care of yourself as well as your family member. Then only we can serve the nations wholeheartedly. Thank you very much.
Great. Yes, thank you, Vishwajeet, sir. What a wonderful and such a powerful opening remarks, sir, you just shared with us, and definitely it would be taken forward, and both of the panels, speakers and all the experts from the school education industry will talk in more depth and in more better conversation on both the assessment part of it and the leadership part of it. Definitely, sir. One very interesting say which you just made an eye opener for us, that how the parent community can be engaged more, and could they play a better role of becoming a teacher, and home becoming a school, and then teacher becoming a mentor. This is a wonderful, sir, an eye opener and a way forward to definitely change the traditional mode of thinking into the current situation mode. And all the problems coming nowadays, every day, is a unique problem and must be addressed with a unique solution to it. So definitely the curriculum should look for the transformation. Rethinking of classroom assessment must be there. Why not to make every home a unique classroom, and every parent playing their role in becoming a teacher, and teacher would be then looking after a broader aspect in how to mentor the skills and how to mentor the coming student to the top leadership profile, and how definitely, sir, your role, the role of CBSE and the Ministry of Education is very appreciable. And the way you said that you will support and you will help to broadcast these areas of opportunity, and to um, all the staff and all the members of CBSE. So it is our best wishes to the entire community of CBSE, to entire group, that whatever initiative which you do, our best wishes are always with you, and keep guiding us, keep mentoring us. We'll keep needing your patronages in days to come. Thank you so much, Vishwajit sir, for joining us for the day today. Take care, sir. Bye-bye. Lovely. So great speech been given by Vishwajit sir. It was actually a discussion, not just the special remarks or opening speech. May I please request the backend team to kindly again play the video for this event, if you are ready with that. Okay, thank you. I'm happy and glad to see the participation increasing after every minute over here. So thank you so much for your special time and your valuable time. And I thought the right justice is being done to this session and event today. I can see a small question being asked by Sunil Patel. Is there any way of that recording of the session could be made available? Oh, of course. We have a YouTube channel of ASMA. So after the session, the recording of the session can be, made available over there immediately after the event. So people who missed to join late can still check the recording of the session in the YouTube channel of ASMA. And also the live is been, there on FB page of ASMA over here. And plus a request to all the participants over here to please make this a virtual event, a more dialogue event by, keep asking questions in the Q&A section over here so that the speakers are also interested in, picking up the right questions, and they should definitely address your concerns and the questions over here. So please make these sessions more interactive. Going forward now, let me introduce the first panel for the day. A very interesting topic is coming over here. It's fostering academic integrity from a young age to shape tomorrow's leader. And the eminent speakers for the session over here is Ms. Archana Goenka. She is the managing trustee and academic director from CP Goenka Group of Schools. Mr. Ashok Pandey, director, Ahlcon Public and International School, Ruchira Ghosh, Principal, Sancta Maria International School, Dr. Vandana Lula, Director, Podar International School, Mumbai, Mr. Vinesh Menon, CEO, Education Consulting and Skilling Services, Absent Group, James Thorley is the Regional Vice President from the Apac region, Turnitin, and the session is going to be moderated by Mr. Neeraj Paul, Assessment Solution Consultant, South Asia, Turnitin. He's a session moderator. It's a privilege and honor to have all you distinguished speakers in the day today. I hope the session is going to be more interesting, and Neeraj, it's becomes his responsibility to engage all the speakers over here to get best outcomes from them. And just to hand over the virtual mic to Neeraj, may I please request the backend team to kindly flash the poll for the day. We are going to ask 2 poll in this event, and I'll be flashing that poll before the both the panel session starts. And it's just a 30-second flash which will be there over here. Team, can you please flash that poll question on the screen? So yeah, panel poll number 1. Which of the following is not an example of plagiarism? Changing a few words of paragraph someone else wrote, borrowing an existing idea and presenting it as a new idea, providing a full source for a quotation, translating owner's writing work into another language without citation, or none of these. So 5 quick answers. If all the listeners and attendees, if you can please, put your answers on this poll, it will help us to evaluate it better. And after this outcome, we can make this sessions more interesting. Kindly participate in this poll. Yes, so going forward, Neeraj, I would please like to invite you to take this session forward. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chandan. It was I was lost in the thoughts of Dr. Saha, and indeed that was very thought-provoking. And some of the takeaways what I could see from Dr. Vishwajeet Saha's starting note is how school leaders can basically think on today's scenario and how we can actually make that change. That is something very important. Anyway, with this note, once again, thank you so much, Chandan, for having me here. And a good afternoon to all the eminent panelists and the participants. And a very special thank you to each one of you for taking out time on a bright Saturday afternoon together to discuss something very interesting and a very yet important topic, which is fostering academic integrity from the very young age to shape tomorrow's leader. Well, there are many questions which you may be catering to or maybe answering to all this while in your careers relating to academic integrity. And also when a child should be introduced to the same. Many of you must be practicing it in your respective institutions also. However, in my personal views, I feel that academic integrity is majorly, okay, fine, that's the result. So providing the full source for quotation scores the highest. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this interesting poll. Great. So what I was talking about, that I personally feel that academic integrity is actually nothing but trust, fairness, respect, and of course, responsibility. And at the same time, courage to act on them even in the face of adversity. And that's why it is very important to imbibe this from a very young age to shape up the tomorrow's leader. With this note, I would like to first invite James Thorley, Regional Vice President, APAC region from Turnitin. Thank you so much, James, for joining in all the way from Australia. How are you doing, James?
I'm very well, thank you, Neeraj, and very happy to be joining you all today. I've been to India many times, look forward to hopefully being over there again in the not too distant future, but very happy to be online today.
Fabulous. So James, without wasting time, I would like to first ask you specifically that I would like to know your thoughts basically on the topic, which is fostering academic integrity from young age to shape tomorrow's leader on this topic. And also if you can share your personal views on the academic integrity culture, especially in Australia and UK region.
Yes, I'd be happy to share that, Neeraj. So a bit of background you can see on the screen, a bit about my background, but I actually joined Turnitin back in 2005 in the UK office. I worked there for 10 years before moving across to Australia, and I've been in Australia for the past 5 years or so. And I think, you know, what academic integrity means to me, it's always helpful when thinking about a topic to sort of try and define it, especially with something like academic integrity. There's a lot of different definitions out there. I like one from the Universities Australia, which mentions that academic integrity means acting with the values of honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility in learning, teaching, and research. Obviously, that encompasses the work of students to ensure that students are doing original work and not copying from elsewhere or not engaging in other forms of academic misconduct. But I think that also stresses that it's not just on students, it's on teachers, it's on administrators. You know, academic integrity is something that we all should be engaged with who are involved in academia. And it's not purely something for students. And I think that's a very important point. Now, in respect to my experience from UK and most lately Australia. So in the UK, around the turn of the century, around 2000, was really when a lot of focus began to be paid to academic integrity, and I guess what you call in a modern concept. I think the rise of the internet made copy-paste plagiarism so much easier to do. You suddenly had a huge amount of online resources, and it was very easy to take that and just put it in an essay and then submit it. So the UK government actually formed a national body, the Plagiarism Advisory Service, it was called back in 2000, I think 2001. And their remit was mostly at a higher education level, although it did look a little bit at secondary education. But their remit was to, you know, fund research, but more importantly, fund education, and in the end, fund technology solutions to help address what was seen as a really pressing issue. That was very successful in higher education. And what we then saw was the topic moving a lot more down into the secondary space. In a lot of cases, because universities started saying, well, it's too late to start talking about academic integrity to students when they arrive at university. You know, we want this to be done at an earlier age. And so we saw that move come more down into the secondary space. Australia didn't have that sort of national initiative, but it did learn a lot from the UK. Australia does quite often, you know, look towards the UK for research. And then over the last few years, actually, I'd say Australia has kind of moved ahead even a little bit of the UK on certain issues. And I think they've done a lot of good work, especially in the secondary space. In Australia, it's very much state-based. Each state controls the secondary education system. And if I take a state like New South Wales, They've implemented a program called All Your Own Work. I'll put a link in the chat in a bit, but it's a compulsory program for students in years 11 and 12. And basically, it looks at key aspects around scholarship principles of academic integrity, acknowledging sources, plagiarism, of course, copyright, and collaboration. And all students have to take this before they're able to graduate. And I think that really, sends the right signal to those senior students aged 16, 17 of the importance of something like academic integrity.
Fabulous. That was quite insightful to understand that how things are working there back in Australia and UK. James, in continuation to the same thing, I would also like to ask you, because based on your current role at Turnitin, how important it is to imbibe these integrity qualities from a very young age, and how do you think that this is going to help the students into the students' academic journey?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can overstate the importance of integrity quite clearly. I think one of the things I always like to start with is the fact that integrity is not something that anyone is born with, any student or any human is born with. Integrity is a learned skill. And so as a child growing up, of course, you're going to have multiple influences. Family is of course important, wider society is important. But the school is a place where they will learn so much naturally. And so I think it's vital that concepts of integrity are introduced to students at a very young age. I think if it's not done there, then it's going to be much harder if they get bad habits when they're first starting school or when they're children, then it's going to be much harder to correct that later on. Now, of course, we wouldn't be talking about, citation and referencing when pupils first start school, but I think there are concepts around, ownership that can be introduced. Of course, how you collaborate with your peers, everyone doing their fair share and not someone taking credit, one person taking credit. Concepts around trust. All of these are kind of base concepts that can be introduced at a young age at school. And of course, on the flip side, it's very important that bad behavior, bad examples are acted upon, and students aren't able to get away with things, and that then will lead to potentially worse behavior going forward. So I think it's very, very important that the right examples are set at a very early age at schooling. And then as they travel through the school cycle, then you can start to introduce more concepts more around academic integrity per se. I think one of the things that I always find very interesting, having sort of grown up slightly after the internet age, I grew up slightly before the internet age started, so, but now students are obviously growing up completely through the internet age, is the sort of the concept of the ownership of work on the internet. I think there's a perception when you're very young that everything is free, right? All of this content, you don't have to pay for it, it's all there. But of course, someone has written it, someone has put that effort in, and just because you're able to freely read it or freely take it doesn't mean that there isn't a full ownership there. And then when they get further on in the schooling life, then of course, pre-university, you can then start talking more seriously about citation, referencing, etc. And I think we're all responsible for trying to create what I call citizens of integrity. And I kind of end this point on a quote that I always really like from Warren Buffett. When he talks about the type of people that he'd want to hire, he always looks for three qualities: integrity, intelligence, and energy. And if they don't have the first one, the other two will kill you. Obviously, it's quite a tongue-in-cheek quote, but if you aren't producing people of integrity who are qualifying as doctors, as pilots, or whatever, it's going to be very, very serious for society. So I think it's on all of us in education to do our utmost to try and create students who become citizens of integrity.
That's a fabulous thought, James. And in fact, I completely agree that, as you rightly said, that integrity is not that anybody is born with. I mean, this needs to be, the concepts needs to be introduced. And if you're introducing it from a very young age, it's definitely going to create a better, education scenario, or better citizens or leaders for tomorrow. That's a fabulous thought, and I'm sure that that sets the right context for us to actually get into the depth of this topic. So this is going to be my first general question to all the panelists, and I'll be calling their names to share their thoughts on this question. That is that how you all would define academic integrity, especially when it comes to in context to Indian education system. So first, I would like to invite Archana Goenka, representing CP Goenka schools. Archana, are you there?
Yes,
Yes,
I'm
I can
here.
see you, Archana. How are you doing?
I'm fine. By God's grace, all well. Yeah, thank you, Asma, for having me here. Very interesting and intriguing topic. And great to hear Mr. James' thoughts. And I think it resonates a lot with what I had in mind when I read about this topic. First of all, I'd like to also put it out there, academic integrity cannot be taught in isolation. Personal integrity and academic integrity go hand in hand. So, because integrity is defined as honesty, truthfulness, all of this, and especially so that one can stick to it. You dig in your heels, and you say that I will be honest, I will be truthful, even in any adversity. Right? You can't be choosing to be honest as and when it suits you, and be dishonest otherwise. So that comes from you being a person with integrity. And I think it then transcends all the boundaries of academia, personal life, professional life, all of that. You are a person with integrity. And rightfully, as Mr. James said, that it's not something you're born with, but it's an acquired attribute. And so that's one part of it. When you say the Indian education system, well, it's a system that's been there for decades now, and all of us Indian panelists over here are products of the same system. So to say, I don't think we've done badly for ourselves in that sense, and all of us have some amount of integrity. But yes, there are areas within the system that do need, rehauling and reviewing and revising, especially the assessment pattern. Why does a person or a child end up being dishonest in terms of academia when you say cheating or plagiarism, all of this? It comes from the unrealistic expectations of every student who is monitored and assessed on parameters which are not different for each person. When we say differential learning, I may not be great at math, but I may be great at music and dance. So are you really then testing that skill of mine? You're not. So when I don't have the skill for math, I will resort to some amount of dishonesty there, because I need to prove myself, to my parents, and to my teachers, because your expectations are only in terms of academia. So I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done if we're really going to address this from the base, from the roots. It is a lot of work. It's not as simple as having a discussion around it and trying to achieve it. But yes, having said that, a person becomes a sum total of the experiences. So all stakeholders, including the students themselves, parents, teachers, everybody will have to be involved in the process of ensuring that we strive to the best of our ability to give this virtue and this attribute to our child. So I think continuous counseling sessions with parents and, kind of having them be a part of this vision for your child is very important, because then they understand what they need to do from their end. You can't be teaching a child one thing and having him experience something else at home. It's important that they also understand as parents what we want from them.
Exactly. That's very rightly said, Archana. In fact, we all are the product of the same education system. In fact, many years back, I would rather say. But then again, we are now fostering it or passing it on to the next generation. And you also said that during our times, the expectations were more towards being a great mark gainer rather than anything else, and we all kind of lost in proving ourselves into the mammoth run of getting good marks, which is completely changing now. As you rightly said, that parents' intervention and introducing it at the right time is very important. Thank you so much, Archana. I'll come back to you for the another question. We also have Ashok Pandey here from Ahlcon Public International School. Ashok, if you can share your thoughts on the same question, how would you would define academic integrity, especially in context to Indian education system?
Yeah,
Over to
thank
you, Ashok.
Thank you, Neeraj, for taking me in here. I think James and Archana have already set a very good background to understand what academic integrity is. Two or three things I want to tell you. Probably some of them may be a repetition. It is very well understood now that academic integrity is about, a way of how you deal with yourself. The integrity in the first place is, can you be outside what you are inside? The integrity is something that, you live by. James was trying to tell you that. And therefore, I think it is a great matter of courage, in my opinion, that do you have the courage to accept that you don't know something? If you have courage to accept that, then you will not go for finding it out in the manner and ways in which you can appear to be knowing it. I think the whole thing begins from there. And therefore, I will give a little bit of a different slant to the whole thing. It is not about yourself so much. It is also about others. So are you fair to others? Are you responsible for others? Do you have some commitment to your surrounding, to your society? What kind of respect do you have? And therefore, the question that you asked, Archana, that what do we do about it? I think we have to, explain the whole value system around which integrity plays its role, right? The second thing is, the integrity is, in my opinion, action word, right? So you take a decision about something and then we live by it every day. That is what integrity is all about, right? So, and then we have to match our actions with the words. And therefore, these are the 3 or 4 things that we have to bring into our curriculum, into our pedagogy and things like that. But give me a minute or two to quickly jump to the more important thing. That what are the barriers to this? I think we cannot take integrity in isolation with the surrounding. And there are certain barriers. So what are the social barriers? When you are dealing with competition, then the social barriers, inequalities, what are your aspirations? So those things are also very important. So not only that we have to teach integrity, we have to create enablers around which integrity becomes a natural phenomenon. And one doesn't have to work very hard around it. And therefore, one comparison I want to draw between our times and the present times is that in our times, the education was a solo phenomenon. Me, and you. I think now it has to merge together in collaboration and participation. And since James mentioned that integrity, academic integrity comes into play in the higher education, and therefore it has to come early in the school education. So what are we talking about? We are talking about research. We are talking about finding solutions to social problems. And I don't think they are all done in isolation or in silos. So if we have to work together, so can we take care of each other? Can we validate each other's talents and qualities? Can we help each other in self-development? If we can bring in those qualities, then this competition against each other will go. And it will become a competition if I can do it in a better way, if I can do it in a more meaningful way, and if I can do it in a more equitable way. I think those enablers will work much better than only teaching that you have to do something in a very, very different manner.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, Ashok, and especially the point that you said that, and in fact, even Archana has touched upon to it, that integrity is something that we can't talk in isolation. And that brings me to my next, question to, which I wanted to ask to everyone over here, that, see, what we have understood that academic integrity, and we all have been following it in our respective institution and so on and so forth. But that what is one current best practice that that you are adhering to ensure the academic integrity? And also, if we can also share about some challenges that we face to maintain that academic integrity. And for this, I would like to invite Ruchira Ghosh from Sancta Maria International School. Ruchira, if you are there, to just share your thoughts on this, if you can.
Good afternoon, Neeraj. Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
It's such a pleasure to be here because I can see some of my friends in the panel as well. It's really nice to be here. I think the context has been set very nicely. And I really loved that part where James mentioned that integrity is actually a skill that can be learned. And I think somewhere before I talk about some examples of how we look at academic integrity, I would say that one thing where as an Indian system, we sometimes fail is that we have all these values. So we value everything a lot. But I think when it comes to putting it in practice, that value to skill connection is somewhere we fall short. So I think it's really nice to hear that integrity is a learned skill. So I know that as a school, we can certainly learn ourselves and then promote learning of academic integrity. Having said that, I think a few things that I wanted to share in terms of good practice. Firstly, again, I'm going to start with a disclaimer that I can't say that we practice academic integrity to the best form or in a very holistic way yet. But this is something that at least we believe is something we need to put in place, especially as a school. So what we currently do, I would start with the philosophy of the school itself. So amongst our own school values, we have fairness, integrity, respect, responsibility, because we are also a Cambridge school. So we also develop learner attributes as part of the Cambridge philosophy. And we start with the teacher and learner attributes and teacher standards, where the professional ethics become an important part. So I would say philosophically, we always talk about what we stand for at the school. So that's the beginning point. Then in terms of curriculum, again, like I said, we are a Cambridge school. So we have some very specific subjects that allow for development of academic writing skills. So for example, when we talk about global perspectives, it has the components of research, analysis, evaluation. Students have to evaluate the sources of information. So all that provides a sort of a background to develop these skills in school. Then also a subject like IPQ, which is International Professional Qualification, where again, students have to learn about research ethics. They have to do referencing and citation. If I think about the primary and the middle school, a subject like digital literacy will talk about the fact that how we are living in an interconnected world. And when we encounter information online, we simply cannot say that, I can just copy paste or I can use it. There is a lot of, I would say, skill that is involved in understanding how we work online as well. From curriculum, we move to pedagogies, and there, if we talk about reflective practice, or we talk about, we do professional development qualifications in the school, where teachers are again taught skills in academic writing, in referencing, how to avoid, not to not to do plagiarism. So those hard skills that are involved in actually developing academic integrity, I think those are coming through some of these programs in school. And then finally, assessment. I think assessment is something you're going to be talking about, Neeraj, a little more in detail later. But I think somewhere when we talk about assessments, we know that there is always a backwash effect of assessment. So if assessments are designed in a way where every answer has to be unique, thought through, you have to put together the understanding of the concepts rather than just rote learn. It goes a long way in how the teaching happens at school and the kind of culture the students grow up in. So I think the fact that we use assessments which are built with all this in mind helps us as a school to also promote academic integrity. And I guess an important part there is success not dangling on grades. Unfortunately, as a Indian society, we still are very, very focused on competition, on grades. But the fact that now we are moving to talking about holistic education, formative assessments, that kind of allows us to start thinking about these other skills that all contribute to academic integrity. Sorry, I took a long time. It was a long spiel.
No, that's okay. In fact, a very interesting point, Ruchira. In fact, it's like muh ki baat chhinna wali, because it's exactly what I feel, and what you said is very right, that integrity is a learned skill. And yes, there has been a donkey race for grades and all, but then yes, we are moving from that kind of grade scoring to more formative assessments, moving to more towards summative as final summatives. So that's a very interesting thought, and thank you so much for sharing it. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Vandana Lula. Vandana, if you are there, if you can share your thoughts on this. Vandana, can I hear you?
Yeah. So very good afternoon. Thank you, Neeraj.
Good afternoon, Vandana. In fact, there are a lot of students reacting on my LinkedIn post when I posted about this, that Vandana ma'am has taught us, and also they are my students. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, Neeraj, very much. Thank you for that. It was really nice listening to James and Mr. Pandey and Ruchira. So yeah, I think when you talk about intent, always comes when you talk about integrity is to keep in mind the principle. And I think our curriculum at Podar very clearly, we do the IB-PYP curriculum, which is where the assessments are embedded in the teaching learning. They're not separate. So it's not that there is a test or there is an assessment after you finish teaching a concept or after you finish teaching a topic, of making sure that you can make sure how you teach is more important than what you teach. So when you talk about the way you teach, the way you question, the way, and in the IB we talk about the learner profile attributes: inquirer, knowledgeable, thinker, principled, very, very clearly, open-minded, caring, risk taker. So when you talk about all this, right from when they are in kindergarten in the PYP program, we develop these attributes within the teaching learning. It's very important for us to keep in mind that assessments is not what you try to evaluate whether the child knows it or not. And that's where plagiarism comes in, because you're all the time testing how much or what I can catch him on and what he has not understood, rather than finding out and making sure during your teaching learning, when you're questioning, your questioning skills should be open-ended. When you have open-ended questions, you are automatically evaluating. The children are answering, you are making your notes, and you're doing your assessments. We do not learn from experiences. We learn from reflection of experiences. And I think that's something that we miss. Every time we talk, when we have a clear academic integrity policy in the school, which is again part of our mission, which is part of our philosophy to be honest, truthful. And I think it's something we do at the DP when we use Turnitin. And I'm very proud to say when we use Turnitin, it clearly shows us that the children do not plagiarize. You can hardly see some percentage of plagiarism that is there in their words, which is something that you have to inbuilt in them when they are PYP kids, when they are in the kindergarten, when they are in the, it's very important in values with the children. When they do an inquiry, so we do an inquiry-based learning. So when they do a research, that when you pick something from somewhere, you need to acknowledge. It's the same thing that, okay, this is my pen, okay, and if you take away this pen, it's not your pen. You have to make sure. So you need to build in that little things right from when they are children, and you need to embed the assessments in your teaching learning. So it's something that we have built over a period of time, and we make sure that, again, we say it's not very common in India. You will see that unfortunately it's very easy to cut, copy, paste. Specifically important to inbuild that within your curriculum, within your integrated while we are teaching. We are telling the kids, we are making them aware and making sure that they keep this in mind that they have to be honest. And yes, it is you who are responsible and nobody else. So I think it's something that you build in your pedagogy and your curriculum. You integrate both from your policy.
Absolutely, Vanda, and I completely agree to you because my child goes to Poddar. He's in 6th standard, and I can see he talks about plagiarism and he talks about, all these things. So I'm happy to know that, these things are quite imbibed, and I'm sure rest of other representatives, they are also following it. And uh, uh, that's a very bright takeaway from this. Thank you so much, Dr. Vandana, for this. So I would like to now move from this a little bit to something else. And Vinesh, we have Vinesh Menon. He's a CEO from Apac Group. Vinesh, a different question for you altogether. That with you have been into academic space for quite some time, and how do you think we can change the mindset of students, especially students? I mean, teachers are pretty much aware in today's scenario, but how we can change the mindsets of the students when it comes to maintaining the academic integrity from a very young age? And Vinesh, I think that apart from the private sector, you're also working involved in the government institute. So if you can kindly throw some light on that. Vinesh, over to
Sure.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you, Asma, for having me here. In fact, I hope everybody's safe. We're going through very trying times. So I think interesting topic, and I'm glad many spoke before me because I think a lot of the answers to your question lie in so many of the points that was addressed right from the beginning by right from Mr. James to Mr. Sriram, Archana, and Dr. Luna. I think as far as kids are concerned, and you're right, we work with both the private sector and the government sector. So to give you a sense, we run private schools under the brand name of Vibgyo, and we got about close to 55,000 students there. And we also have started working very, very closely with state governments to transform their schools. And when we talk about transforming their schools, we're talking about transforming right from their preschool section, the Balwadis, Anganwadis, and going all the way up to the higher grades in the government schools. And try and address this in both spheres. On the private school space, I think what everybody said made a lot of sense, and that's pretty much what we do. I just want to highlight about one of the initiatives that we have. We've got an initiative called Novella in the Vibgyo school chain. Novella is actually a collection of short stories which is being done by the Vibgyo kids, and they actually get sold in Amazon, and almost every year, each of our schools gets almost about 30 or 40 or 50 entries. Now, when you go through those entries, and we've got a tool that actually sifts through these entries, and you realize where the plagiarism is coming in, who's actually copy pasting, who's picking up from the net, who's starting to look at words which are common with the other stories, etc. So that gives you a fair sense of what's happening in that space. And obviously, then we have to correct it and change the mindset. But this mindset really cannot be changed unless you have some form of a there has to be a link back to the family. I think someone talked about family values. Eventually, it really begins there, isn't it? And this is exceptionally evident in the recent last year when a lot of the teaching and the exams started getting digital and you started having online classes because that's when you really do not know what the child is doing. And there are times when I'm a little humorous. There are times when the child is sitting in front of a mirror and the teacher can see what the child is doing. You see another textbook somewhere there. There are times when the child looks somewhere else, and obviously there is a parent lip syncing or giving answers, on the side, and all this is because India, I think, still undergoes this whole problem of assessment of learning and not assessment for learning. And as long as assessment platforms remains of learning, I think this problem will remain because ranks, marks, all this matters. And I agree that they are changing, but the change is pretty slow.
Very true.
Now, changes to the government sector. Government is very interesting because we are talking about children who belong to laborers, children who belong to the privileged, the economically underprivileged, children who are probably whose parents want them to do far better than what they have done, children whose parents are illiterate. So what you notice there is a lot of humility, a lot of innocence. And these guys don't even understand the concept of cheating and all that, because for them, getting an education platform to them itself is a big thing. So for sorry, I think am I audible? I got a call in the middle.
Yes, yes, no, no. We
Okay,
just
sorry.
lost you for 1 second. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, so I was saying that the humility and the innocence in that environment
Yeah.
simply gets them to be so enamored by just bringing the learning to their doorstep that their focus is really on that. So when you bring in some kind of an interactive learning mechanism or an experiential mechanism, or you just put a smart class and start showing some animated videos, they're so lost in that that is what they pick up more than wanting to become competitive with the next child and therefore trying to do something different. So these are very different streams, and I thought somewhere in the text, I read someone saying India is a very diverse country. And that's the truth. We have got such a wide range of people and children and teachers and parents that one size just cannot fit all. And that is somewhere where we need to probably have slightly more micro ways of approaching this whole process. The government can do its bit. I think somewhere, of course, apart from the overall assessment system, and the NEP is taking care of a lot of those areas. But I remember reading about a particular gazette that was set in 2018 July by the government of India, which talks about prevention of plagiarism and adopting academic integrity, but for the higher education. Now, this whole concept of thesis, research papers, not copying, and there are levels of offenses, 10% copying, 60% copying, etc. I think somewhere in a very sensitive manner, we need to start bringing this down to schooling and figure out a way to make this a little more structured. Because today, what's happening is that it all depends on each of us. If our ethos and culture wants us to do this for our schools, we do it. Okay,
Yeah,
if the parents want to kind of give that integrity to the child, it happens. But what do you do? And I'm not just talking about academic integrity here. Academic integrity is a foundation for the integrity of the persona as you go forward, isn't it? Today, when you see false news coming up, fake news, wrong tweets, what is all that? Eventually, it's all about getting compromised on integrity at some point of time. And unless that is integrated into them as a child, which has a direct connection to the family values, I don't think this is going anywhere. So I think to summarize two very different categories, government, I think it's not going to be a challenge in the current stream, at least because they're so keen to learn. But in the private school side, I think the competition is still there as you go into the higher classes, and that's a problem that we need to address as a group.
Yes, Finish. And I completely in sync with what you were saying that we as a country we have a wide range of people, and definitely one size will not fit all. So possibly it's also the responsibility of the institutions, boards, to actually formulate a policy or work around it to build upon it. I would like to just bring your notice about Pranjali, Jaya, and Sunil, who have posted very beautiful thoughts on the chat. Also, there is one question which was also a part of my question bank, that if you can highlight on any of you can take this up from the panel member. We all are talking about the integrity and how we practice it and how we believe on it. But if you can also talk about how your institutions or the institutions that you belong to, how is it that you're practicing it in your institute? Is there any tip or any best practice that you do, one best practice that you do to follow integrity or acknowledge integrity? Any one of you can pitch in over here. Yeah, sure.
Okay, Neeraj. So, is somebody else coming?
Right.
Dr. Vandana, I think we can't hear you.
It's a very good question.
Dr. Vandana, we can't hear you. I think your voice is cracking.
Can you hear me?
No, Vandana.
Ashok, are you?
Yeah, Vandana, you go ahead, but your voice is cracking, Vandana.
Yeah. By the time Vandana comes back, Ashok, if you can just share your thoughts.
Yes. So, Neeraj, what I was telling you is, I remember my teacher. who used to say, when some children were found cheating or something like that, two things he used to say. One is that, you should prepare yourself so well that cheating becomes, the time you spent in cheating becomes a disturbance to you, and you take it as an avoidable distraction. So that is the level of preparation. The second he used to say, khudi ko kar buland itna कि खुदा बंदे से पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. You see, I mean, so we come from that philosophy.
Exactly.
I was listening to Mr. Narayan Murthy once, and the same question was asked to him, that how it is possible for you to set up an empire which is totally based on the fundamentals of integrity, right? And he said, I am more aware or conscious that when I go to the bed in the night, can I sleep without a pillow, right? So I think we have to bring this to the discourse with the children, that what are the consequences of not practicing integrity, and what is the cost that you have to pay when you get into some trouble. So you develop self-respect, you develop trust and dependency of others, you have peace, you have stability, your words, values, actions will come in straight line alignment with each other. I think these are the consequences. But the fact is, as I said in the beginning, Neeraj, that we have to bring academic integrity is only a small part of the overall integrity of personality, So there are certain spiritual aspects to it, and we must not forget it. So do we have jealousy? Are we lazy about doing things? Do we have greed? Are we excessively, obsessive about name and fame? We want only benefits for us. I think we have to take care of those things also,
yes,
because
I
those
agree.
are the fountain head from where the lack of integrity emerges, right?
Exactly.
And therefore, I think I'll just conclude by one of the spiritual masters, who has said, in the process of doing and thinking, we have lost our capacity of being. So we have to teach our children to be being, under inverted comma, rather than all the time only doing and thinking. So
Fabulous.
I think these are the things that we bring in. Yeah.
Fabulous, Ashok. That's a very different take altogether, and that really is making a lot of sense. And I think that if we imbibe this in our culture, I'm sure we can achieve. Vandana, if you are back, you were saying something.
Thank you, Neeraj. I think it is very simple to do it. When you and I went to school, we had a class, moral education.
Yeah.
I think value became value education. And
Exactly.
how do you integrate it within the curriculum? So I think morning assemblies is where you can initiate, and it's very simple thing that you plan it in your year's plan. You put down good sayings and maybe ask children to come up with small role plays, some kind of quizzes. Morning assembly is the right time to initiate it. And I still remember when we went to school, there was a lecture in the morning. Okay. Another way is now we teach digital citizenship. I think because of technology, cut, copy, paste, the plagiarism has increased. And I think the key important factor is, are we teaching children to be good digital citizens? So it's very, very important. All of us have undergone a training for digital citizenship. And I think that's what we are now trying to inculcate within our curriculum, and also train all the children on digital citizenship, because finally somewhere it's important to repeat and make sure that before class or you end a class, you make the children aware that this is what is important. You have to keep in mind that these are things that you can do and these are things that you cannot do, and involve parents, make them aware.
And something similar, even James have also touched upon, talking about the creating a citizen of integrity, something similar to that. So yes, we have to wrap up in next 1 to 2 minutes. So my next question, I was coming to you, Ruchira. I was coming to you only. Yes, Ruchira, please share.
because I just can't stop talking about some other examples because I love the way
Exactly.
Ashok started with the philosophical take on the whole thing. And Vandana and I have worked closely together as well. And I think that whole thing about bringing in, certain values through assemblies and
Yes.
all, and that's something which we are all very passionate about, how we bring them about. I mean, I just wanted to talk about 2 or 3 simple ways in which, it starts right from the teacher, because we have to model integrity, right? It can't be just taught. We have to demonstrate that we are showing integrity. So something where as teachers now, we've all moved online. So on our slides, if we show how we are referencing content, when we pick up an image, we just put that proper citation there or referencing there. I think it creates a visual impact also for students to understand, okay, this is something important, and that can happen in every class. So I think teacher modeling some of these skills within academic integrity, that's one thing. Second thing is, we do not have to always appreciate the finished work of a student. So if a child has done some work, but it is their own work, it's shoddy, it's still to be completed, let's appreciate that effort. And let's say it's wonderful because you've done it yourself. And not
Absolutely.
always, applaud for something which looks very complete and perfect. And thirdly, I'll say use of tools can be an important thing. And Turnitin, of course, is one really good tool to use at higher classes, especially. But as
Yes.
teachers, we can all always learn a few skills through some training. And I think I have come across a training from Monash University recently, which is a self-taught course on academic integrity. It has a lot of concrete examples there. So I think any teacher or school leader wanting to really do something themselves can just take on that course. And I'm not promoting
Fabulous.
Monash University. It was just easy to find it on
Yes,
the
Ruchira,
internet.
and I really love the way you have drafted that sentence, that whatever the student is producing, I mean, we need to encourage the original work, which is very important. It can be the most simplest of the work, but as far as it's original, it makes a lot of difference.
Neeraj,
Archana,
I'm going to take 10 seconds to give one line. Whatever
yeah,
is just heard, my
yeah,
only addition to that is we have to have a parallel engagement with the parents. Because if we do
exactly.
not do that, that can lead to a conflict in the child. And that is what we need to really work on. Because imagine a child understanding a few things, let's say not breaking a red light, and he or she sees his parents breaking the red light. Now, that's where the conflict starts. And you have to somewhere keep that in mind and address that problem too.
Sure. Ruchira, if you can just put in chat the course that you have mentioned, a participant wanted to know. Archana, if you are there, I would really quickly like you to sum this up, the current what discussion we are having. Archana, you're there? Archana is not there. So I think Archana is just logged out. So I'll just come to James again, and I'll just wrap this question up. James, if you can just throw some light on how you think that technology support initiatives, I mean, how can technology support this initiative, and what are the various strategies towards the culture of academic integrity? I mean, if you just quickly sum this up, the entire discussion. Over to you, James.
Yeah, just talking about technology, I think when you think about technology, it's firstly important to understand that technology is just a tool, of course, that it can make no judgments. It's always up to the human, to the teacher to make any academic judgments around what's happening. But what technology can enable you to do is work much more efficiently and do it at scale. So I think that's really where technology can come in. So rather than spending 10 hours doing something, technology can do it in minutes. And likewise, if you've only got someone who's the ability to do something at an institution, technology can enable you to scale up much more easily across a whole school or institution.
Yeah.
I also think, of course, that technology, we live in a world where, in a high technology world where everyone is using technology. And so I think, both students are using technology, we're using technology in all aspects of our daily lives. So I think it has to be in the classroom as well from that respect. I think it's been a great discussion. It's been fantastic inputs from all of the participants. Really enjoyed hearing it all, and I think what I really think is great is that what I've learned over the past 15 years across the world is that academic integrity is a universal concept, And it doesn't matter where you are, what level you're at, that it's important, and we can all share and learn from each other. And it's, yeah, it crosses all boundaries, all cultures, all languages, and it has its importance in every one.
Fabulous, James. That's a brilliant sum up thought by you. And I would like to thank all the panel members. In fact, due to the time constraint, we have to wrap up. But then most of the questions were asked by whatever you have shared with you. In fact, my book is all full of points, and I am very soon going to write a paper on it, because there's so many interesting topics. And as you all are the representatives of one of the top schools and boards in the country, and I'm sure with your contribution towards this, we are there to change the mindsets, definitely, not just to the students, but also to the parents and community by large, so that we can make, as Dr. Lula said, that digital community or digital citizenship can be built on, or as James rightly said, that citizens of integrity. Thank you so much, all of you all, for this brilliant and thought-provoking session, and we look forward to connecting with each one of you individually and discussing with you that how we can take this forward from here on, and how we as an organization can help you to foster academic integrity from the very young age. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Neeraj.
Over to you, Chandan.
Thank you, Vandana.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dinesh
Lovely to see
and
you.
James. Lovely meeting all of you. Thank you, Chandan. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Neeraj. In fact, lovely moderation from you, and I hope you did the right justice from this distinguished panel over here. I'm so happy to see some of the old faces whom we used to meet in the physical events. Dr. Vandana Lula, Sir, you, Mr. Vinesh Menon. I'm glad to at least we are able to meet each of us so frequently. Ashok sir, I have also got a privilege to meet you once.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So those
Same
were the
here.
days, exchanging cards, having talk over a sip of tea, then a lunch break, then a tea break, and then maybe a felicitation ceremony if an event is happening, and then we go back to our respective homes. But every day is a learning, sir. We have learned a lot. Many new lessons are there to learn every day. In fact, good justice has been done on today's this is a weekend time, Saturday. I'm thankful to all you speakers and all the audience who spared their time, and they thought that this is an important session to be here and listen to the speakers who are talking about such an interesting topic about academic integrity and technology. I think that academic integrity and technology and how it has helped the school education, we also have to think on how accessible and affordable these technologies are, because with technology comes the cost, and with cost we need to see how user friendly these technologies are. And then comes the role of these technology partners like Turnitin. They are playing definitely a very crucial and important role to help us understand what are the key challenges, problems by using this technology and how it can be overcome. So partners like Turnitin, they are playing very important role in understanding your needs, challenges, and then coming up with an effective and cost-effective solutions. So let's embrace this technology. What comes in as an outcome of this event. Let's be innovative. Let's keep skilling and reskilling. We truly appreciate all of your time with us. Thank you all over here. Let's see by when we'll all be prepared to open the school gates again. And my best wishes definitely to this journey ahead. All you academicians, to your teaching staff, to your non-teaching staffs, and definitely my best wishes to all the students who are preparing for their board examinations. Best wishes to you. So, kindly like and subscribe our social media handles of ASMA. We'll keep on seeing the various updates coming up, the interesting events in days to come. And people who have missed to attend this important session may definitely go to the YouTube channel to hear this out. Thank you so much. Stay safe and stay tuned. Namaste. Yeah. Bye, Vinesh. Bye, Vandana ji.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Amrita ma'am.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, bye, Ashok. Yeah, James, bye-bye. So with this, may I please have the backend team to please play the video for the day again? Great, thank you. As I see on the clock, we are just running with 10 minutes late, but believe me, this 10 minute is worth, because the time which we have spent on such of interesting, topics. And when the day started with the keynote address of our special guest for the day, Dr. Vishwajeet Chaji, Director, CBSE, Ministry of Education, and the opening presentation by Chaitali Moitra, Regional Director, South Asia Turnitin. Then the session, took its own pace when we discussed a very interesting topic on fostering academic integrity from a young age to shape tomorrow's leader. Before introducing the next panel, may I please request the backend team to to flash the poll, the second poll for the day. So before each panel, we are just running a small poll to get a feedback from the audience and making this session more engaging. So second poll for the day. Can you please flash that on screen? My request and appeal to all the participants over here to kindly go through the question and put your feedback over here. So the question says that currently among the following, which challenges are you facing while grading and providing feedback? Manual work consumes a lot of time and effort. The volume of papers make it tough to keep the consistency throughout. The physical pain of carrying heavy papers, discovering an answer to be worth more or less points far into grading session, dealing with regrade requests. Please take your 5-10 seconds time to kindly fill this up. So by the time people are participating in this poll, let me have the honors to introduce the next panel for the day. It's a very interesting session again coming up. It's on assessment in blended teaching environment. The eminent panel speakers in this panel are Dr. Amrita Vora. She is the Director of Education, GEMS India, and Executive Principal, GEMS International School, Gurgaon. Mr. Roshan Gandhi, CEO from City Montessori School, Lucknow. Seema Sapru, Principal, the Heritage School, Kolkata. Ms. Sunila Athli, Principal, Amity International School, Vasundhara. Ms. Uma Ravitran is the Head of Schools IBDP Program, Indus International School from Bengaluru. And the session has been moderated by Mr. Neeraj Paul, is the Assessment Solution Consultant, South Asia, Turnitin. He's the session moderator. I'm so happy and glad to meet few of the old faces like Roshanji to you, Dr. Amrita Vora, Seema ma'am. You have been coming as our speakers in most of the forums of ASMA. Glad to have you here. Hope the session goes more interesting as it proceeds. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you so much, Chandan. In fact, I am all thought-provoking at this point in time after the first panel discussion and after seeing the list of the eminent panelists for the panel 2. I'm furthermore excited. I'm furthermore excited that I am sure that with their thoughts, I'm going to write another paper on assessment in blended teaching environment. Well, a very warm welcome to all the participants, especially to all the eminent panelists for taking out time on the Saturday afternoon. Yes, we are running 10 minutes late, but as Chandan rightly said, we are going to make up for it, and the participants are going to be enlightened with beautiful thoughts out here. Indeed, we are obliged that you all are here, and we look forward to your discussion. Well, the way we learn has completely changed, and I would rather say drastically changed due to the world's current climate. We have gone from face-to-face to hybrid to blended, and now to completely virtual models to kind of mirror the traditional K-12 classrooms. Well, this has not only changed what schools look like today, but how teaching and learning are imagined during this pandemic. Well, so though we did adopt it quite quickly to transition from face-to-face model to completely an online model by using various available LMSs. However, one thing that still takes a lot of thinking is a good assessment solution, which can be authentic, rubric driven, fast, effective, and definitely it has to be feedback based. So planning out your assessments and leveraging technology tools for assessments are definitely the most critical steps for setting up an effective practices for the blended learning environment. And we all agree that by using the right assessment tools, instructors can definitely and consistently track students' proficiency or specific standards, or in fact, the learning targets. With this note, let's start this very interesting panel discussion titled Assessments in Blended Learning and Teaching Environment. So my first question in general to all the panelists, and to start with, I would like to know that how best you will describe the blended teaching environment based on your academic experience in connection to the current scenario. And for this, first, I would like to invite Dr. Amrita Vora from GEMS India. Amrita, over to you.
Thank you, Neeraj. And I've been listening to the discussions in the previous panel also. And yes, you're right. Very, very interesting discussions have been ongoing since morning here. Now, to describe the blended learning environment, well, we've all as educators been talking about it since quite a few years now. We've all been talking about students taking ownership of their learning. But the pandemic, I think, pushed us hard enough to genuinely take the plunge, accept change in many, many ways. Many of our schools, many progressive schools across the country were already doing a whole lot of it. So it was comparatively easier. But for many schools, it was much tougher. And there are many where, the accessibility, the digital divide, etc., is still a challenge, and we cannot turn a blind eye to that. So that is there. But then technology is here to stay. It may be a demon that does need to be tamed nevertheless. And for the very first time, the classroom has genuinely transcended the idea of space and time. You're no longer limited by, from this point in time to this point in time, everyone's got to be available, or, now or never. You can capture a lesson, a child not really well at a certain point in time can look at it later. And there is much more. While we had differentiated instruction earlier, while we were inclusive earlier, there are many more tools available now to the teacher, which can be utilized very effectively to make learning not just more personalized, but also more personal. And why I'm making a distinction between these two terms in particular is because more than 85% of the professions that will be there in 2030 are not yet invented. And we are genuinely moving into a direction where learners, no matter what we're teaching, probably our children today may not be useful to them in very near future. Things are changing at that faster pace. So what we can really give them most effectively is the ability to be able to learn, or learning how to learn. And that needs to be really at the heart of it all. And self-determined learning is what really works well. And lots has been heard in panel after panel over the whole of last year and now ongoing, that children keep muting, or how does the teacher build a connect when you're not physically present. There is so much more that is also advantageous in face-to-face learning, and of course not to undermine the advantages of the blended model. But what's very, very key in all these disadvantages is the fact that, yes, that ownership has to be at the center, and we really need to allow for a whole lot of student voice and choice. So unless we make our pedagogical approach, radically aligned with this, it will not work. You cannot expect to be that dramatic that the child, despite having the option, will go on listening to somebody lecturing about XYZ. You can't be at all times. So it has to be something where the learner is at the center, genuinely so, and therefore is engaged, and therefore is enjoying and wants to do it, and therefore is doing it. So for each learner to be able to reach that level, there's a very strong shift in pedagogy required. What's very, very wonderful at the same time is the fact that children are, we saw over 146 student exchanges over just last year. Children are every day, the classroom is now global. We had a large network of schools earlier too, but you had to really plan out, think it through, and it took time. So the number of global exchanges where children from different classrooms from across the globe are actually interacting. We would do Skype and all earlier too, but now teachers are co-teaching, teachers are planning it through, children are, so collaboration is happening, and collaboration is not, sitting here and collaborating, it's virtual collaboration. Communication is happening across the globe, which is again a very, very key skill. I remember times in college when I was teaching cross-cultural communication in higher education. I mean, to mass comm and MA students, but now I don't think this generation of kids going to require it because they are living it every day as little kids. Assessment is at the heart of it, and I'm sure we'll all talk about it in the course of this discussion.
Dr. Amrita, very nicely you have put that entire thing. In fact, that has covered my next couple of questions also. You've answered to it, and very strong point that, a very strong shift in pedagogy is required, though we all are doing it, but then more newer ways of engaging student is exactly important in a blended environment, especially. And another thing that ownership needs to be there. That is again a very interesting take away from your point, and also that the students are not limited to point time. The classrooms are not morning 7 to 12 or so on and so forth. It's like throughout the day. With this note, I would like to now invite Roshan from City Montessori to share his thoughts on the same thing. Roshan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chandanji and Asma for inviting, and Mr. Neeraj for the chairmanship. Very important topic today, and I think where we need to start actually is a question of what is blended learning, because I think we keep using these terms, and actually they mean a huge number of things. Some schools would have claimed to have been doing blended learning prior to the pandemic already. And some would be claiming to have been doing it throughout the pandemic, and some say it's now a new thing which is here to stay. So we need to be sure what it is. I think it is, it is an inherently broad concept which includes a variety of ways of teaching. And I think one thing where it's often confused with is what one might call hybrid learning. So I want to just make the distinction between blended and hybrid learning, because I think hybrid learning is now something which a lot of people are talking about as something which is sort of induced by the pandemic and a new thing which is here to stay. And that would be sort of combining, a few days offline and a few days online, and working in a hybrid model that way. And that's kind of like a form of blended learning. But the other kind of blended learning, which already existed to some extent prior to the pandemic, and now hopefully will become much more normalized, is integrating the use of technology into particular subjects and teaching methodology. So what I used to, what I say to teachers sometimes is it's if you're conducting your maths lesson in the computer lab, you're doing blended learning. So if you're using technological tools to enhance the pedagogy or the teaching or the imparting of material or the assessment of existing subjects, then you are conducting blended learning. And I think right now the potential for that has been seen by everyone, because we've all been forced into that to some extent throughout this pandemic. And I expect it to become quite normalized. What we would like to do in our schools is get ourselves to a place where we can fully normalize that. It requires a few things to come together. I think schools have a journey to undergo to make it a possibility. You need the infrastructure to be in place. You need children to have access to that kind of technology in classrooms, and you need to go through a lot of logistics to work out the best ways of doing that. You need to be able to timetable sessions where children are going to be behind the technology. You need to make sure there's access to enough devices, but you need to make it cost effective. And not all schools can afford to, give up computer labs for this purpose. Some schools are looking at getting trolleys where tablets or laptops are moving around between classrooms, but some schools might have logistical problems in doing that, depending on how their building is, structured and the length of corridors and the height of the building and all of these things. So, schools are having to go through a lot of homework to make that a possibility. And then when it comes to, actually imparting quality blended learning, you need teachers to be supported and empowered to do that. And there needs to be time and space created in the curriculum and the timetable for teachers to actually just experiment. And I think that's another key thing, that because we are not 100% sure on what the ideal blended learning model is yet. Prescriptive training is not helpful at this point of time. So, telling groups of teachers that this is how to do blended learning or that is how to do blended learning is not very helpful. Of course, yes, introductory sessions and helping with the basics is good, but after that, teachers need to be able to be supported to experiment and find of making good use of blended learning, and then come together and share whatever good practices they've been able to develop with each other, so that the good learnings can spread across schools and across the whole sector. So that's where we're at with blended learning.
Very rightly said, Roshan. In fact, there has been challenges in blended learning. I mean, not everybody is blessed with the right set of infrastructure or access to the technology, logistic issues, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's the need of R at this point in time. But I would like to now twist this question in a different way, and would like to invite Seema from the Heritage School, Kolkata. That of course the question remains the same, but Seema, I would also like you to tell us that has this been a regular practice with you in your school, or has pandemic forced us to get into this? So if you can just throw some light on this.
Mr. Neeraj, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, now you're audible completely.
Okay, so Mr. Neeraj, good afternoon. I just wanted to tell you that, well, you've invited only those schools that are, they have good infrastructure and, one of the best schools in the country. So you can't ask us that whether we had blended learning in our school or not. So I guess, Neeraj.
Let me twist it in another way. I wanted to ask you that while you were there in the face-to-face scenario in 2019 or 2020, how much percentage of blended was there? Was it completely synchronous, asynchronous? What was the modality that you were handling?
See, everything was synchronous as well as face-to-face synchronous it was, because each classroom has a laptop, a projector, an interactive board, and teachers were, but I must say that there were PowerPoints and there were videos and there were, teachers were teaching, giving lectures, as well as, this was PowerPoints and everything else was a part of teaching. So that was how blended learning was happening. But I must add on here that it was, maybe Skypes, FaceTime, which was, or WhatsApp at times, because, that was how we were doing blended learning. Today, the entire face of it has changed. So we are not here face to face. We're not physically teaching and learning. So I guess, this question about, especially for Turnitin, I have to give a lot of credit to you people also, because a lot of our assessment could be possible because of Turnitin. That was one thing which we felt, yes, I must mention here that this was very important for us, because we said, okay, let's get everybody's work and let's pass it through Turnitin. So at least we get to know whether our children are doing the right thing or copy pasting. So that was very, very important for us. But well, yes, if you want me to talk about blended learning, how we do it, I guess you have lots of other questions to ask me. So maybe at that point in time, I can tell you about the assessment.
Sure, Seema.
Or do you want me to tell you just now?
No, I'll come back to you then on the assessment part of it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Seema. Sunita, if you can share your views on that.
Good afternoon to all the panelists, and Neeraj ji for introducing me so wonderfully. Well, I would like to say in different words maybe, that to be honest, before the pandemic, blended learning, or you call it hybrid model, was mostly discussed and deliberated in theory, and very little of it was translated into the actual practical classroom scenario. And there were topics for paper presentations, discussions, webinars, and workshops. So it just remained on paper in theory. And one can understand because the reasons were many. Firstly, being that the digital divide in our country is so much the urban schools and the rural schools, some of the schools which are in the vernacular, that in the remote areas where internet connectivity is so weak and non-existent, this digital divide had to be translated to first digital proximity, and that took a lot of time. Then inadequate teacher training. Most of the teachers are still not ready to probably adapt and adopt to the new technology, because yes, we are hesitant after a certain age to take on technology as it should be. And of course, the reach of the hardware and software, that was also difficult. Where there were two children, how could a parent have two laptops or two tablets? And changing our mindset from the traditional pedagogic and assessment patterns did require a push and a nudge. And probably the pandemic has done that for us, along with the national education policy, both which fortunately and unfortunately came in the same year. Now, post 24th March, there's been a paradigm shift in schooling all over the world, and India also has not been, kept away from it. But hats off to our teachers. I mean, if, as ma'am, one of the co-panelists said, that we are the schools which could afford synchronous and asynchronous models of teaching and online teaching so quickly, be it Zoom or Google Meet or MS Teams. But there were still remote corners of our country where the teacher used to blare out the lessons from the mohalla ka loudspeakers. So it was a challenge for our country post-pandemic to handle this, but the teachers still did it, because at the core of the heart, the learning, we all realized that there should not be any learning gap. There were many teachers who would audio record or video record lessons and send it on the WhatsApp. So these things have changed, but yet a lot needs to be done, seeing the diversity and the vastness of our nation. And as they say, necessity is the mother of all invention. It sounds very cliched, but that, that is all, in fact, if we are brought together on this panel today on the webinar, thanks to technology and thanks to the pandemic, otherwise probably we would not have ever met and discussed and deliberated on our professional, thoughts and opinions. So schooling has to be reimagined, schooling has to be reinvented, teachers have to be upgraded and upskilled, new transactional models have to be taken up. The blackboard and chalk has to be changed to the online board and the digital tools. Even checking became such a problem because you could not have the subjective question answer format. It was mostly MCQ in the Google Doc form, or if you're using the Microsoft Team, it was through the Answer Garden and Padley Wall. But whatever be the shortcomings, whatever be the challenges, this disruptive innovation has improved schooling, because now the children can have access to the best resources. The Absolutely. Best part is that, there is CBSE, which is putting up its good lesson plans through, there is Doordarshan, which is coming up. So the child is not kept away from schooling and learning, even though his school cannot provide him with these kind of technological benefits, but the child has access, free access to all these online portals. Secondly, It became cost effective, because it was not, a lot of money was not involved over here, because even if the child has a television connection and the Doordarshan, he can log on to the Doordarshan and see some classes over there. And most of it, the child could study at his own pace. The best part of it, because we had these learning management systems which were put up on Moodle. So if the child does not have that hardware at home at that particular time, he can have access to the teacher's lessons, the worksheets, the activities, and yet be at par with the rest of the class. Yeah. And another very good thing of this thing is that inclusive education, the children who were special children, they were greatly benefited by it. And because, in their own small breakout rooms or chat rooms, they could communicate, they could, resolve their the gaps in their learning with their teacher, with their peers. So if it has been a setback, at the same time, it has been a great unifying factor also for all the schools across our country.
Very true. And so beautifully you have put this across, Sunila, that the challenge was definitely, as you rightly said, was from digital divide to digital proximity. And definitely, I mean, standing ovation to all the teachers who have really worked day in, day out, and to make this possible, especially to reach out to the remotest of the places where even the proximity is not there. And yes, necessity is the mother of all the inventions. And who knew that the classroom blackboard will one day become a blackboard collaborate ultra as an LMS, and we all are going to work on it. We never thought, I mean, when we were studying. So thank you so much. I'll come back to you again on assessment part. So we also have Uma Ravitharan here from Indus International School. Uma, if you're there. Uma, are you there?
Good afternoon.
Hi, Uma. If you can share your thoughts on the same thing.
First and foremost, let me start by thanking Ms. Sunila. That was wonderful, ma'am. Yes, the appreciation goes to our teachers. Without them, this would not have been possible, because all along I'm a teacher, been a teacher for the last 15 years. So we had been, there had been a specific mindset that we had been used to all this time. And pandemic has moved us from that comfort zone into something else. But we were quick to upskill and we were quick to adapt. So both the reskilling and the upskilling happened very, very well. So I want to thank Dr. Sunila, Ms. Sunila, for saying all this. Yes, the first appreciation is to teachers. The next one would be the point of digital divide to proximity. And of course, I have to quote Ms. Seema on this. I come from one of those very privileged sector where children have virtually all the tools. We have all the tools, we have all the gadgets, we have all the logistics. And since 2018 itself, the CEO of Indus Trust, General Ray, anticipated what was coming. And we had already introduced blended learning as support classes. Due to the commute, we decided children cannot be kept back in school till about 5 o'clock for support classes. So we used to send them back at 3:15, and the support class was done by teachers on a virtual platform at a time convenient to them. So we had started it in 2018 itself. So when pandemic descended on us, so the movement was pretty seamless for us. So we moved, since we have already been practicing, since we were aware of online tools, since teachers were aware of online tools, and children knew how to use them, how to interact on a virtual platform and things like that. So it was easier. Our transition was seamless. But having said that, when we are talking about blended learning itself, and as I said, I teach English, and coincidentally, I see many of the panelists over here are English teachers, so am I. So if you're looking at that, it'll be possible to see that learning in a blended model sometimes is teacher-centric also, because we are delivering, and we feel that we are doing our best, we are delivering, we are saying, we are teaching and things like that. Going back to what Dr. Vora said, students should take the ownership for their learning. It has to be self-directed. So they have to understand, yes, this is being delivered to me, and the students will have to take it from there. So that is a challenge as a teacher, as teachers we've been faced. So we believe that, yes, syllabus is completed, we are taking syllabus understanding, we are taking syllabus focus, but is it reaching all 25 students in my class is something that I have to be very, very mindful about, right? While there was a digital proximity and our special needs children did gain from it, there was also places where they were a little compromised, because the pace was such, the expectation was such, the necessity to complete things was such, so it was a little compromised. Though we had synchronous classes, asynchronous classes, and it was very, very planned out. We had a 3+1 model where we had an online system teaching for three days, and 1 day was synchronous. So all this was planned out. Yet, my submission is that learning has to become student-centric. Students do have to take their ownership, and students do have to reach out to their teachers on that one particular day, which has become asynchronous, to clear their doubts. So this was a personal experience, and especially when school opened for a short stint, and when we were talking about our borders and asking what was the problem that you guys were facing in a blended scenario and things like that before the IB examinations, this was the feedback that I got from the students saying, you guys did a brilliant job, and all teachers did. But then there were certain limitations to our learning. So that is the gap that has to be bridged right now in a blended learning scenario.
Fabulous. Exactly, Uma. You have touched upon to the very interesting point, and the best takeaway is that learning has to be student centric. Whether it is a synchronous mode or whether it is asynchronous mode or possibly any kind of modalities. Thank you all the panel member for sharing your thoughts with this. Now let's just move this discussion a little bit to the assessment in blended teaching environment. I'm sure, I mean, as we know that you all have been doing it either because of the necessity, or you have been doing it from many years, or you have thought about it, or some portions of you have been doing as in the blended, as in the virtual mode. What are the common types of assignments that you all have adapted, and how you have made sure that it is going to be student centric? And at the same time, if you can also touch upon the challenges that you might have faced, or if you have followed a formative kind of an assessment or formative going towards summative. So if you can just build around this, the discussion, any one of you can volunteer to start the discussion over here.
Shall I?
Yeah, please, Dr.
I don't mind. Oh, please go ahead. Sorry.
After Dr. Amrita will come to
yeah, no problem. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, yeah. Assessment is actually one of the key, the favorite topics that I have, and I always start talking. And I so agree. I really wanted to be first here because I wanted to just add quickly to the earlier thing. I loved it when Roshan pointed out very clearly, among various other things, that teachers need to be able to, be supported to experiment. That's very key. Any kind of, I mean, we all have agreed and we all have really appreciated that nothing that, we as teachers, or rather now I use the term co-learners, because there's no longer any kind of really teaching happening. We are all learning way more than children are learning every single day. And we're all learning a whole lot from students too, apart from others. So teachers genuinely need to have this feeling in this whole tough time that, the management is saying, I have your back. Just go try it out, do it. It will work great. If it doesn't go right, go left, no problems. Right? So that I have your back is so necessary, and no kind of top-down approach I think could have worked. What really worked, and it worked wonders, was the reason why we thankfully already had the professional learning community functioning well in the school, and which is why every teacher was every day figuring out, okay, this is working well. So in my team, as my mentor, as my buddies, I'm telling you, this one worked for me. Let's try this. Next day they tried that, and one more thing got added. No, we've got yet another tool. This is even better. Let's try this too. And children are enjoying it. So it just meant that every day teachers were not limiting themselves to X number of new tools that they learned. Some tools are very effective in a science lesson, while something else was much more effective in a language lesson, and many discoveries got made. And I think that really made our assessments amazing, among other things. So yes, while everybody else was talking about, we heard a whole lot of discussions on academic integrity through last academic session from a whole lot of people. We were not really ending up facing much of that, because children were thoroughly enjoying the way they were doing assessment. One reason is children were already used to the idea of self-assessment and peer assessment. And this concept of it's assessment is not for marks. Assessment is not for somebody to judge me. Assessment is to see, okay, what did I get? What did I not? And the power of yet is very key, and the power of because alongside the growth mindset is very key in the whole concept of learning in the schools. So therefore, children did not really think about okay, you know what, I can cheat. And the kind of assessments are such that a whole lot of open book and case study based work is a part of it. So even if they want to, they can't really, and they are fairly used to, thankfully. And in the previous session, Ruchira pointed out it's important to model when we are also using any kind of tools or anything, any presentation, any referring to any article from anyone. It's important to use citations. It's important to avoid plagiarism at every level. Only then children see that working. So therefore, I think children were able to utilize that beautifully. Another very key thing that Uma pointed out is, whatever I'm doing, am I really being able to reach out to each of those 25 in my class? Is each one of them getting it? Where is each one? Has it worked? Has it not worked? I think one of the things that we did for every 5 students, because time was very limited and it was difficult for a lot is possible through body language, which you're able to see when you're in a physical classroom, and teachers are naturally used to that. But on this device, when you were no longer blended, you were purely remote. Blended is blended. You are using technology for certain things in the school.
Exactly.
But you're also meeting those children every day, and you are and you're blending it because you know that a Padlet will be very useful, so I use it here, or a Kahoot will be very useful for this particular thing. Good, I use it as a tool here. But you're not totally depending on it. When you're in a remote environment, you are depending much more on technology. And therefore a lot of that body language element goes away. So that is when it became very key. So we created for every 5 students, and this was a rotational thing. We call them group captains. Some classes gave different names. It was just nomenclature is not important here. But different children became group captains. And for every 5 children, one kid ensured that all my peers got it. Or this one is still confused about X. Because children don't usually come up with, this is my problem. There is still that fear, no matter, it takes a while. There is, we're somewhere, it's very important to develop that intellectual confidence in children to show up as themselves. If I made this mistake, it's not the end of the world. If I made this mistake, yeah, it's okay. Show up as who you are. And that's such an important skill, not just right now, it will be important forever. So that is very key. And every day, while we can keep working towards developing that, nurturing that, it doesn't happen overnight. And therefore, when they help as peers, and each one is also a teacher and a co-learner in the classroom, I think it works best. That's the kind of collaboration. In that space, any form of assessment, whether it was subjective, whether it was objective, of course, became way easier with technology.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all teachers loved that, and data became much more easily accessible and could be utilized well. But subjective became tougher, but our SID marking approach helped there. The 3 colored pens, children were enjoying using those. Children were basically marking anything that they're proud of in green, anything that's not gone quite well yet, needs better, needs to be better, or the exemplar that was shared was way better, and I think I'm lacking here, I'm lacking there. That is yellow. So this is my yellow box. And the teacher and the student would try and see that whether the yellow boxes that the teacher identifies and the student identifies are mapping or not. And then something that's totally not okay.
To red block.
Pink. So red is a color to be avoided.
Okay.
No red zone.
That's fabulous, and thank you, Dr. Amrita, for sharing that best practice. In fact, that's quite enlightening, in fact, and very interesting. And it sounds like a gamification in assessment. Very interesting. Seema, if you can now put your thoughts on this.
Yes. I begin by saying, it will sound very, very cliched, but I have to begin by saying that there needs a paradigm shift in the assessment system. So
Absolutely.
all of us use traditional methods of giving importance to marks, ignoring the effort. But, that's how it's been all along. So not that you can actually measure the effort. I mean, traditionally, people would say you can't measure the effort. But, if you give short assignments and, if there are well-defined rubrics, we will be able to recognize how conscientious the child is. And, you need a qualitative as well as quantitative way of measuring the child's ability. That's very, very important. Especially in our school, we're very particular about this. So what we do is, say, for example, what we've done is summative assessments have been replaced by formative assessments. And of course, that has been done for a very, very long time. But this has helped us in the online assessment also. And let me tell you that rote learning has actually been replaced by conceptual understanding. I think so. Also, initially, we were also a little confused. So we'd asked parents to proctor examinations, and we'd asked, okay, somebody at home sits there and makes sure that there are no other gadgets. And then we would ask the children to move their laptops around to show us that there was nobody around to help them. And there were no other devices. All that happened. But then we thought, it would be nicer if we give them open book examinations. I was in fact listening to the panelists before me, and I thought to myself, I'm going to repeat a lot of things, but then I can't help it. Sorry, we are all, the kind of principle that we are everywhere, all over the country. We do this. So we had open book examinations, and, we had to give them open-ended questions, which is very important. Now, since most of us are IBDP and Cambridge schools, and we have an international curriculum along with the CISE, so our teachers are very, very adequately trained. But, I think professional development plays a very, very important role. We will need somebody to train teachers to be able to make such questions so that children can, that there are multiple answers as long as there is a valid, evidence to prove it. So, in fact, even multiple intelligence theory, I'll tell you, this is something that, the new National Education Policy has been talking about it. But it can actually be implemented in its true sense of the word, even when we are teaching learning remotely. And I'll tell you how, if you give them opportunities, children can actually discover their own intelligence and understanding. So, see, what happens is, if you ask the child to read something, comprehend, and say something briefly about the topic. Not to write, remember we used to have précis writing in our days. So if you don't have to write a précis, instead, if you draw a flow chart, you speak briefly about the topic, you make a mind map.
Infographics,
Infographics, you write something. So it will encourage our students to try out various ways of expressing themselves. So this is how I feel we've done this with our children. So, to be able to, hone their skills, and it's not just about linguistic and retention ability, but about your skills to be able to apply, speak, sing, listen, self-assess, the ability to think logically and mathematically. I think all those can be done. So that is what we've done with our children. And I would say that there was a new concept, new topic, new chapter. Everything was new every day. We were converting books into storybooks, into ebooks. We were doing, teachers were reading, parents were reading. We were listening to each other. Of course, classrooms were at home. So parents and teachers had become the best of friends. So I think, and then of course there was a lot of project-based learning. So I guess we tried our best, and we were thinking, observing, children learn to understand why we need to preserve our environment. So many things were happening, and I can, if you want, I could, just mention a few things. We were using Google Classroom and Google Meet and Google Forms and Zoom platform, and a lot of educational platforms we were using.
Fabulous.
So thank you so much.
Very nicely put up, Seema, that that conceptual understanding has suddenly become very important. The modules have suddenly become more of a storytelling rather than just a particular module and just do it and finish it off. And let us give a good round of applause to our students also, when they are the most adaptive in all kind of situations. I remember my son was in 5th standard when this pandemic hit. Until that time, he used to hate computers. I don't know why. but then suddenly he's today teaching me a lot of things into computers. So that it's a blessing in disguise, I would also say. uh, uh, I'll go to Roshan first, and then Uma, I'll come to you. Roshan, if you can just share some best practices at your end.
I think, I mean, the fundamental question here is, what are we assessing kids for?
Exactly.
If we're assessing for subject knowledge, then we need incremental improvements, perhaps, but we don't necessarily need a paradigm shift. If we're assessing for skills, that's the paradigm shift, and then we need to rethink what assessment looks like. So when we're talking about assessing subject knowledge, that still needs to go on, and incremental improvement is important, and I think digital tools can be really helpful there in some ways. Specifically not because the tool itself is great, but because it has two benefits. One is that it saves a lot of time on correction and marking. And two is that it generates all this data. And if that data is harnessed and utilized properly, then you can really pinpoint interventions towards individual students. So if you're collecting data, which is topic-wise within a subject, rather than overall paper-wise, you've got really powerful data that you can use to make interventions in classes or in sections of a class or whatever it is, or with individual students. Of course, that's theoretically achievable even in traditional pen and paper assessments, just by marking the papers that way and entering the marks in a bifurcated manner topic-wise. But realistically, that's not, already poor teachers are having to spend so much of their time doing this stuff. So the acceleration which technology allows is really important there. So it saves time and it generates data when it comes to traditional sort of assessment. However, I think skills-based assessment, there isn't necessarily very robust technological platforms yet that can do this for us. What we need is to make a sort of paradigm shift in the educational community towards rubric-based assessment. We need to coach and train teachers in how to utilize rubrics. We need to have really well-designed rubrics. And then you can start working with students. For example, supposing you've got students doing project-based learning. Now, you can actually assess that project. You can do a group assessment of 4 or 5 kids who've worked together on a project. And you can assess different skills that have gone into that, whether it's their research skills or their presentation skills, or their subject matter knowledge gathering skills, all through rubrics, and you can rate children that way. And I think it's going to be important as an educational community to bring stakeholders along in that change process. So, if we want to normalize rubric-based assessment being visible on a report card, if we did that tomorrow in our schools uniformly, it'll be great for the kids, but the parents might turn around and say, oh, but what about the traditional marks, So we need to really work with our parents and educate them and bring our stakeholders along so that people, the whole parent community is willing to support this change, and they're willing to see those sort of new style rubric-based assessments and value those things.
Very rightly said, Roshan. And in fact, assessing skills is extremely important, and the same needs to be aligned with the learning outcomes, of course. And yes, rubric-based assessment, and it can also be a dynamic rubric-based assessment, something like how Turnitin's Grade Scope offer, wherein you can just have dynamic rubrics and you can assess the assignments in a by large form. Uma, over to you. You wanted to add something, and then I'll move to Sunila, and then we will sum up. Yeah, Uma.
I think Roshan summed it up very, very well. I'm just going to regurgitate everything that he said right now. What are we assessing kids for? While that is the key factor, there's one more thing. We also need a paradigm shift in our thinking also. When we are talking about what are we assessing for, in fact, we started something called the Innovation Curriculum at Indus International School, Bangalore, where there is a 4+1 model. We give 1 day to just work with research, like we call it, and we are also changing the pedagogy at a school where we are using the design thinking process. So children identify a problem, define a problem, ideate about it. So there is collaboration that happens, and they're in small groups of 5, right? So they ideate about it, they define the problem, they do the survey, they send the survey, they work out the questions for the survey, they send it to the teachers, they get the data, they mine the data, and then they this is very important data. They mine it, they find out the problem, and then they define the problem. And we are pushing both children and teachers towards the rubric-based, criteria-based assessments. So where they decide, okay, this is what I should be looking for. If it is research, this is what I should be looking for. And that kind of criteria-based assignment is rubric-based, criteria-based assessment is very, very important. The second thing is the paradigm shift in the way we construct our papers itself is very, very important. Now, teachers need a lot of professional development to do that. As Ms. Seema rightly pointed out, we did all kinds of gimmicks. Now, 3 cameras, done this side, angle, proctored by parents, and I should say it was a good joke, right? But that's not that should not be the intention. The intention should be to test the child for their skills, competencies, of course, concepts, and then the subject knowledge. So every assessment has to be application-based. Every assessment has to be conceptual. And for that, teachers have to be trained. Teachers have to understand how do I construct a question paper. I can, of course, going back to the academic integrity aspect of it. In fact, we have tried 3 versions at the same time, so that we ensured that we minimized it. But having said that, that's not the intention. The intention should be to have project-based learning, criteria-based, rubric-based, open book. And as Ms. Asima rightly said, one of the experience that we had at English, I'm quoting from English because I'm an English teacher, we completely changed a short story into a graphic novel, which was project-based. So there was a lot of creativity and innovation going on. Both are required. We have to understand what are we assessing the kids for. They have to, and it should be, the feedback should be a quick turnaround. The turnaround for feedback should be very, very short. Data has to be mined immediately, promptly. Intervention has to be done with such quickness. And apart from that, there has to be professional training, professional development for teachers to construct question papers where they check the kids for skills, competencies, and concepts and not content.
Wow. Uma, I think that was a complete crux of everything what you have just said. But to sum this entire thing, I would like Sunila to kindly come forward and
yes,
sum this entire thing.
Yes, Neeraj, I'll not go much into the assessment because the panelist before me has spoken much about it. I'd just like to go to the challenges. The problem was never what to teach. The problem that arose in blended model was how to go about it, how to teach it. And the schools have now got added responsibilities because they are not only now catering to the cognitive domain of the children. What about the EQ, the social quotient, the physical quotient? In this entire process of blended and hybrid teaching, this somehow got sidelined. We could not reach out to the hand and the heart of the child. We reached out to the head, but these 2 important aspects were somehow left behind. Secondly, the second challenge was for the pre-primary children, the preschoolers. For them, socialization and social skills are of paramount importance because maximum learning over there takes place through the multisensory processes. So you could never have the storytelling, the circle times, the puppetry. And what happened was over here, the children got demotivated. A digital fatigue has set in now for the children. It was very exciting in the first 6-8 months, but now they want to come back to school. And there were also issues of cyber safety concerns. Teachers had to be trained to handle cyber safety issues of the children because they were now 5-6 hours on the net, and there was no parental supervision many of the times. Another problem that arose was for the practical subjects. This was a very big challenge. We've talked about the pre-primary, now to the senior school children, because lab work, practical work, which requires dexterity of the hand, which requires observation, data collection, all these things were somehow, they did not fall into the ambit of online education. And this is something where we need our schools to maybe open up, after some time, because this practical work also is a very important part of learning, because other than concept building, it is experiential learning, it is teamwork, team dynamics. And over here, as a best practice, I can just sum it up by saying we took up this O labs. This O labs concept became very popular. And surprisingly, it's really ironical that this concept of O labs was launched in 2015. It is now in 2020 that we are making, we are optimum use of it. It was funded and started by the Ministry of Electronics and IT. And now when we go to it, especially for classes 9 to 12, the lab manuals, the simulations, the videos, the interactive animations that take place over there for the experiments and for the, the way it is individualized. The best thing is that. So we have alternatives, no doubt, but a day has to come when the doors and gates of a school have to be opened to our children. Blended learning cannot be the way for the future for all times.
Thank you, Sunila. And we all are praying very strong that the doors are going to open very, very soon, and our children are going to be back in our schools again. Thank you so much. And there are so many takeaways from this entire discussion. In fact, we all are so passionate teachers and academicians and thought leaders that I'm sure the discussion, if we have to sit the entire Saturday afternoon, can get into Saturday evening. But then we will definitely connect back again into some other cross path wherein we can discuss furthermore into blended teaching environment and what could be more best practices. Each one of you have shared something very, very interesting, and I'm sure that our participants must have been really enlightened by today. And definitely we are going with one question, that is, what are we assessing our kids today? I mean, is it skills? Is it conceptual knowledge? It is something more than that. And each one of you have added so much of thoughts out there that it is absolutely now ringing in my head that what is it the next journal that I have to write based on all the matters that I've collected as points. And coming to Uma, thank you for bringing out this point of design thinking, because I'm very closely associated, especially on the ideas defining to making a prototype. And if we can really apply that with some kind of technology into assessment parameters, I'm sure there will be a different kind of side of assessments altogether. And that way we can really focus to assess the skills rather than just depend on grades. And of course, turnaround feedback needs to be short. That's another very interesting thought that has come up. Thank you all once again, and I look forward to talk to you all again. So for any more resources, this is for the participants on academic integrity and assessments related topics. We would definitely request you to kindly visit our resource page, which is turnitin.com/resources, and you will find a lot of over there, a lot of new assessment tools that we have been talking about, and we can definitely give you the demos. Thank you once again. And with this note, I would like to ask Chandan to come back here.
Yes, yeah, thanks, Neeraj. Before summing up and the formal thank you to all, I would just like to appeal to all the viewers and attendees over here that you have shared the feedback link in the chat box. We would like to have your comments over there to help us understand and help us be more better in our execution and delivery of webinars. And with this, you also become eligible for the e-certification for attending this knowledgeful session. So yes, thank you so much, Neeraj. It was a great moderation indeed again. And since morning you are over here and you are trying your best to bring out the best of the content from these eminent speakers who are representing one of the finest schools of the country. So it's not an easy task. So my claps and appreciation for your moderation over here. And we hope that your screen is freezed. Am I audible to you, Neeraj?
Yes, you are audible. Am I audible?
Okay. Yeah, you are audible, but I guess your video is been fine. It's good now. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just moving. Can you see me moving?
Yeah. Now I'm seeing you happy and moving.
Technology.
So we hope that you all have like enjoyed the and this learned session, the valuable session. Good insights have been coming since the start of this session from our special guest from CBSE, Dr. Vishwajeet Chaji, and the special address by Ms. Chaitali. And definitely from all both the panels, the speakers who have been talking about the best practices and the experiences which they have been using in their premises and off the premises. And as Vishwajit Saji told in the morning, that every school, every home, in fact, have to blend towards being a school, and every parent has to blend towards being a teacher, and every teacher has to blend itself to become a the role model, and to skill the students more in becoming the leaders of the country now. So this is how the transformation is coming. It becomes an equal role of all the parents and all the households, that in what way are you transforming yourself in making the kids to become the future leader ready over here. And I guess the people and the students who are the kids who are you coming out from these last two difficult years, they are going to be one of the tough leaders of the country, I must tell you. The students who have been facing this environment before these 2 years would not have been the same kind of outcome by which the best outcomes which you are going to see from the early childhood students to the school students and to the higher education students who are coming up to the industry over here. They are multitaskers in all the fashions. They are not only the MBAs in one stream, they would be MBAs in multiple streams, and likewise, it goes for everything. My best wishes to all these academicians, all the educators over here, to you, to your teaching staff, to your non-teaching staff, to all the parents and students at your premises. You are doing a wonderful task, ma'am. You are the front fighters during this COVID difficult times. And definitely along with Neeraj, it's our salute and ASMA salute to everybody who have been, doing their best and trying to deliver their best. Nobody was aware of this situation, and nobody was aware of this webinars, virtual events. We have started inculcating, and thanks to this platform that we are every day meeting each other. And every time we think that यार ये 1.5 घंटा कम हो गया, शायद ये 3 घंटे का event होता, हम लोग कुछ और बात कर लेते हैं. So this 1 hour journey for 6 panel speakers like you is definitely not the right justice to this. But with this, as Neeraj told you, we'll be coming up with some more series of events like this, so that we can bring up some more topics over here. Everybody had a weekend today, including you, including us, but we thought that this important topic must be addressed, and we think that during this Saturday we could get better participation, and that is what we experienced. So thank you all this audience who have been listening in patiently since morning. And yeah, so what I was trying to say, that your experience of academic integrity and technology, and how my 3 lines are there. Neeraj, let me just finish that, then I'll come to you. So the tech partners, like Turnitin, are playing definitely a very important role in understanding your needs, your challenges, and then coming up with an effective and cost-effective solutions. Because with technology, I believe there is a cost factor also attached to it. With technology, there is an accessibility factor attached to it. So how accessible this technology is, how user-friendly this technology is, from teachers' sides, from parents' sides, from students' sides. So definitely, partners like Turnitin would definitely come up with the customized solutions for all the schools who are over here. It's actually, we are working for this in developing this platform for the benefit of you only. So let's embrace this technology, is what we have learned. Be innovative, keep skilling, reskilling, and upskilling. We truly appreciate your time with us, and let us see by when we will be prepared for school gates to be finally and physically get opened. My best wishes to your journey ahead, to everybody at the school premises and outside school premises, and definitely my best wishes to all the students who are preparing for their board examinations. This is a difficult time and tough time we have never experienced, but kudos to you. The kind of work which you have been doing, nobody has done till of now. So your results will be better. So yeah, before summing up, Neeraj, may I please invite you? You are saying something.
Just a couple of thanks over here. Thank you all the panelists for a stupendous session, and all the thoughts and ideas that you have shared. That they were definitely like a mana for us, and it's definitely going to help us build a thought leadership forum in future, wherein we would like you to be a participant and a speaker where we all can connect and provide new dimensions to the world of education that is evolving so rapidly. Would also like to thank all the attendees for being there so patiently, and a special thanks to Dr. Vishwajeet Saha from CBSE. I would also like to take a moment to thank Mr. James Thorley, all the way from Australia, from Turnitin, Ms. Chaitali, Moitra, and Tanishto, and the entire Turnitin team, along with Chandan, Ashish, and entire ASMA team for making this wonderful event a reality where we could experience the invaluable thoughts and ideas by the dignitaries. And as Chandan rightly said, that we would like to say that we will have another round of events soon that will be deeper dives into specific arenas of integrity and assessment, and how we as an organization that provides domain-specific tools as a remedy to various challenges in these specific spheres. Thank you so much. Whatever weekend is left, have a great weekend, be safe, and keep smiling. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye. So stay safe, stay tuned, and namaste to everybody.
Stay
Thank you
safe
so much,
and
Dr. Amrita Vora,
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Roshan
you.
Gandhi, Seema
Bye.
Saploji, Sunila
Thank
Akshi,
you.
Uma Ravitran,
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
Neeraj, and to the entire
Thank
Turnitin
you
team.
so much.